Thank you for auditing Professor Skye's Record Review, the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who was temporarily quarantined in the basement due to some COVID-related concerns. So as you know, I am the Rip Van Winkle of music critics, which is to say for 18 years I didn't pay any attention to modern music. So that means that I don't know anything about the band Big Thief. The cool thing is that the band Big Thief hasn't released anything that I've paid attention to. I have never heard one single second of theirs. I have, however, reviewed the album by Adrian Lenker, which I liked quite a bit. You can see that, I'll put it at the end, a link to it. And now I'm going to be reviewing the other lead member of the band, Buck Meek, and his album, Two Saviors. So this might be interesting for you if you are a Big Thief fan. You probably aren't watching this. If you are a Big Thief fan, because I mistakenly called them Dirty Projectors on the last episode, I just get those two mixed up in my head for reasons I don't understand. But it might be fun for you if you are a Big Thief fan because, I am completely new to both of these songwriters, both of these artists. And it's exciting for me to basically imagine, what would it be like if I only heard All Things Must Pass and, Plastic Ono Band. If I heard that instead of ever having heard the Beatles, what would my impression be? The main thing that I think about this album is it took me a while to warm up to, and I had to analyze why. I think what it is that you sort of hate what you are. You know what I mean? The thing that you dislike most in others is what you see in yourself, right? That's a thing that's been true for a very long time, right? So some of you might not like this video or might not like my approach because you think I'm too preachy or I'm too full of myself, and it might be that that's what you fear about yourself, right? You just hate what you see in others that you see in yourself. And so when I listen to this music, the term that comes into my head is this very specific term I first heard 15 years ago. Applied to me. The term is Hipster Country. You see, around the turn of the century, I got into a huge Hank Williams phase. I became obsessed with Hank Williams. I bought his complete works. I started listening to him. I then sort of expanded out to listening to other country music, and I ended up falling in love with a certain kind of country music. Now, at this time, I was a young man. I was living in Marseille, France. I was living in LA. I was living in Boston, living in all these fabulous places. And I'd bring my guitar around and I'd start trying to play these old songs. And that was the line that really cut right to me, that I was just hipster country. I wasn't really living it. I was just sort of doing it as an affect, a sort of cultural appropriation, even if that culture itself is theoretically white like me, right? So when I heard this album, that was the thing that came to mind. Just that, this guy, the album feels very, very Brooklyn to me, right? I have all these preconceptions about Brooklyn, about me not liking it. So this guy is from Texas, apparently, so that is kind of a natural thing. I guess he went to Berklee School of Music along with Adrian Lenker. I just found that out. I did grow up near Boston, and I'm impressed that anybody was able to go to Berklee and make music that does not feel like it's made by somebody who went to Berklee, overly technical. I had these preconceived notions when I heard it, and this is the thing, in order to really love artists and appreciate music, the thing that I always do is I identify the thing that I like the least, the thing that is the biggest turnoff, and I accept it, at least for a brief period of time, okay? So if I'm listening to trap music and I don't like the hi-hat beat, I just accept it, and then I move on and I listen to the rest and I try and figure out, is the rest of it interesting? Is the rest of it good? For this, I just had to accept the fact that this felt to me like the kind of music I was trying and horribly failing, okay? I mean, really failing to make 20 years ago. This is hipster country, but it is very, very good. A yodeling voice, kind of lo-fi, junky style musicianship, pedal steel that works just right, an intimate feeling, a low-key, just down-home feeling with personal lyrics that connects really well. It's very well made. The lyrics are good. The thing that's perhaps most interesting lyrically is that there's no angst at all in this whole album. There isn't a single bit of oh, it's so hard. Everything is just about nature and love and life. If I was being unkind, which I'm not, I would maybe call it even worse than hipster country and call it latte country, because it does have the feeling of something that someone might enjoy driving to Starbucks while listening to NPR. But that's kind of a snarky thing, which I'm only saying because I'm trying to sort of like peel back the onion and sort of show you the kind of very negative self-criticism, all these things that I kind of fear about myself, that I'm just some sort of intellectual effete, just going around and living his happy white bread life in his happy white bread world, that allows me to dismiss art like this. And I'm not going to dismiss it. I'm going to listen to it. I suggest you listen to it because it is a very good album. Now, what's cool is that it's basically broken into two halves. The first half of the album is a little bit more down tempo. The second half is a little bit more up tempo. And I think this works quite well because you definitely need both. I think I read just the headline of the Guardian review of this album saying it was too slow for its own good. I don't really think so. I think you need to listen to it a little bit more carefully. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to take you through this whole album, track by track, as I like to do. But I'm going to start off by giving you what I call my homework, okay? I'm going to point up to the sky, and there'll be a little link to a song by Buck Meek, and I want you to listen to it. By the way, Buck Meek sounds like a name of an ironic porn star. I don't know. Like Buck Meek? That's a very funny name. Okay, so I'm going to point up here, and that's a song that I'm going to want you to listen to before you listen to the rest of this video. In case you've never heard Buck Meek and you want to know what it sounds like, I'm going to have you listen to the first song off the album, Pareidolia. Pareidolia. And I'm going to explain to you now why this is exemplary, okay? What is it about this track that shows the good and the bad and the slightly pretentious of this album, okay? First of all, the yodeling style that we hear on this track is what he does throughout the entire song, throughout the entire album, and I really appreciate it. I sort of both simultaneously hated it and loved it when I first heard it. The more that I've listened to the album, the more I've come to just simply love it. Nice, junky, lo-fi production, and the name Pareidolia is like very emblematic of the lyricism of this album itself, right? Like what the hell does that mean? Like what the hell does that mean? I had to look it up. Pareidolia is when you look at a cloud and you see a face. Or do you see this wood paneling behind me in this basement that I'm compelling myself to live in for a little while? You look in the wood and you see the face. This is a song about that. So there's two different ways of taking this title. On the one hand, it's like, okay, smarty pants, way to use a really obscure word that I had to look up. This should be the enemy of good art, this kind of intellectual exercise. But on the other hand, it's a very good word. I'm happy to have this word now for the rest of my life. I've spent my entire youth, before phones, before televisions in my room and all that, that was my main entertainment, was pareidolia. I would just look at the wood grain inside the walls of my room, and I would just see faces and I would just see things. This is an interesting human experience. It's an interesting way that humans interact with nature and try to derive meaning from it. That's a good idea, right? That's an interesting idea for a song. That's the kind of songwriting, the kind of, on the face of it, maybe a little bit obnoxiously precious, that behind it is actually something really quite good. A good example of the lyrics here, maybe it's a baby, maybe it's a cat and mouth swallowing its tail. This one looks like Lady Guadalupe, an airplane in her hair. So just the kind of way that you see these things and they shift and the references to nature. And it's also a very good indication that this album, it starts off pretty low key. I mean, there are drums here. It's kind of a shuffling thing, but this is the tone and the atmosphere that the album maintains all the way throughout. It is a very consistent tone album in this sort of I hate to call it, I think hipster country, if we could somehow call it hipster country without that being an insult, I don't think I can. I'm trying, but I don't think I can. Another thing about this track, the way it's produced, happens a lot on this album. The drums are entirely in the left channel, or mostly in the left channel, and that happens a lot on this album. A lot of the production decisions are just sort of dividing up the instruments and putting them in different channels. So great track. Follows up with the track Candles, which is co-written by the other member of the Dirty Big Thief, Adrian Lenker, which I guess I see the similarities between this and the Adrian Lenker album. What I like about both these albums together And by the way, if you are a Big Thief fan, please tell me what is it that I'm missing from not having heard their albums, about these two albums, the way they go together. But I like that one of them is just totally sparse, just guitar and singing, and this has a full band. And I am interested to hear how these things come together in one band. But this is just a very nice, especially the pedal steel work on this song. The pedal steel throughout the entire album is really good. In my hipster country phase, okay, I can't believe I'm admitting this. I had a pickup truck. I unironically wore a cowboy hat. I had a leather duster. It was a rough time. It was a rough time for poor Professor Skye before he went to grad school and figured out what he wanted to do with his life. I had my urban cowboy phase, which wasn't the best look on me. But you know, during that time, my brother gave me his pedal steel guitar, but it was broken, and I didn't know how to fix it. So I basically just had a piece of furniture that made me feel like a failure, which, I don't know. Okay, but it's really quite nice. An interesting idea here. I mean, the song's beautiful, right? Like there's these harmonies on the second chorus, which are just ethereal and beautiful. When you read things that Buck Meek says about his own music, you sort of just want to jump through your computer screen and just slap him around and say, "Shut up, you skinny bastard." Like, this is how he describes this song. "I was making my escape when the siren song caught me a mile up the road. My nose started bleeding by the second note, so I lit a candle to keep moving. I may have died and woken in heaven's motel with a telephone seashell at the bedside. It rang in waves, and waves spoke. The waves heard through me." So sort of on one hand, I just want to say, dude, just take it easy. I get it. You're a cool, kooky artist, dude, and you write about your poetry with more poetry. But then we get to the second song, okay? Second Sight. And in this case, the chorus to this song is, "I work for free because love is all I need." And then you hear him describing it, and this is a case of the opposite. I hear this and I go, thank you, Buck Meek. This is it. This is beautiful. This is what he says. "The value in our world is built by the labor of love, a currency that accrues no debt, enriching both the giver and receiver." So I think I'm split on whether or not I should read these things that he says, or whether or not what he's saying is unbearably pretentious and my poor sensibilities can't possibly take it. I think it's nice to have an artist who's so earnest, and especially when the earnestness is "love is all you need." It's like the Beatles said it, right? The Beatles said all you need is love, and then everyone was just sort of like, okay, we don't need to say that again. But it probably does bear worth repeating. This song is great, nice kind of plodding drums behind, really wonderful. The harmonies throughout this entire album are really muted and very much in the back, and it's very appreciated how well they're done. Very stereo effects again in different channels, drum in the bass in the right, weird kind of guitar licks in the left, and there's this yodeling voice going everywhere. A beautiful instrumental breakdown. This is a real highlight of the album, the instrumental breakdown on this track. You just hear this group. I saw a video of theirs, and it's very clear that they're just a bunch of young guys who enjoy each other's company, and they just like to play music, because they're clearly not going out to lunch. This is the skinniest group of musicians I've ever seen. Not a bad thing. It's good to be in shape. But anyways, it seems as though they enjoy not eating and playing music together. And that comes through in the playing, right? Often solo albums are staffed by studio musicians who hit the right note. But kind of true, I would say, to the country aesthetic. You know, Hank Williams would fire a guitar player if the guitar player was too good, which drove my ex-girlfriend crazy, and she went to a music school. So it's interesting that Buck Meek comes from this fully classically trained background, but still manages to successfully incorporate this kind of low-key, perfection isn't everything musical aesthetic. Next track is the title track, Two Saviors. I don't know what this means. Two saviors fighting over a soul, a black eye leaves a black hole. It seems the glass has cracked, it's getting cold, hold me, Joe. I don't know. I don't know what this is, but I think this is a really good illustration of his talent for writing lyrics. A black eye leaves a black hole is a nice line. I don't fully understand it, but it's one of these lyrics, and I talk about this a lot on the channel. I love lyrics where I don't understand them, but I understand them at the same time, right? That's what good poetry is. You both get it and don't get it at the same time. It really is quite nice. This has just pedal steel and guitars just going all over the place. His most Hank Williams style yodel is on this song. Then we come to Two Moons, and this is towards the end of the first half of the album. I suppose it's side A. Why did I do that? Two Moons, it's cool. It's got like multiple layers of voice and these lazy guitars and just singing eyes behind eyes. But I might be sort of getting a little bit tired of this downbeat mode. And then the next track, Dream Daughter, has that same feeling, a little bit of fatigue with this atmosphere. This one's just guitar and voice, very little else. A little bit bored at this point of this style. Now this is what's great. This is why album construction is great, I think, because you can hear that, and if the album pulls it out, you immediately forgive what you just felt. So I thought Two Moons and Dream Daughter were too samey, the whole album's one note, and then, bam, my favorite track on the album, Ham on White, comes up. Flip over the record, I assume, side B, everything starts picking up. All of a sudden, those last two tracks were building to something. They were part of something. They were not just something boring. They were just part of the dynamics of this album, leading into Ham on White. Why do I love Ham on White so much? First of all, I like eating ham on white bread. This is a beautiful thing to do. Americans are crazy. We believe that turkey, we actually choose to eat turkey over ham. Do you know how crazy, do you know how much cognitive dissonance you have to believe that turkey tastes better than ham? Are you out of your mind? What, because it's low fat and ham isn't? America needs a reckoning. Ham is wonderful. Unless you have a religious reason not to eat it, you should never eat turkey over ham. And ham on white, I am a professor of French. That is one of the main foods that they eat in France, is ham on a baguette with some butter, jambon beurre. It's just a great mixture. Ham sandwich on white bread, you can't do much better. So I like that. But really it's the construction of the song that's great. It starts mysteriously with him singing in the most odd way. He sings the entire album about having not eaten since 1995, which I suppose I believe. And he wants half of a sandwich from the person who he's talking to. And then bam, the drums come in, these great, badly recorded drums. It sounds like they just have a room mic for the drums as opposed to miking each drum individually. And he just keeps singing this line, I'd do anything, and he just sings it over and over again, and it's a beautiful thing to sing, and it's very catchy. It's the catchiest thing on the entire album. Then he asks for some potato chips. Out of nowhere, a Neil Young guitar solo comes up. Again, coming from Berklee School of Music, you might expect a Steve Vai guitar solo, but instead we have a Neil Young, and just this great guitar that's jangling behind. It's a beautiful song. You know, I'm working on a sort of continuous list of the best songs of 2021, and Ham on White is definitely making it on there. I love this song. The upbeat stuff continues with the track Cannonball Part 2. I suppose he has other albums, and Cannonball Part 1 is on there, because I don't think this is connected to the song by the Breeders. Kind of a rocking song, which is about a bunch of things. Fireflies in New York. The chorus is just, what? Race me down to the well, said Sue. Last one surrenders their family jewels. You're quick, but Hunter, I am too. I don't know what that means, but it's a good example of the images that he's able to paint, the bizarre tapestry that he is weaving with his lyrics. Great piano-guitar interaction on this song. I really enjoy it. Then this sort of upbeat side takes a turn towards the more jazzy with Two Moons Morning. So that's the second track called Two Moons. Kind of a bluesy jazz thing. A nice parallel to the other. Followed up by Pocket Knife with doubled voices, which I hadn't really heard anywhere else on the album. I'm very happy that he sings about sparrows in a fight with a hawk in flight. Now, unless you live in a city, if you live anywhere in the suburbs or in the country, did you know that you can look out at any grouping of trees, and if you sit there for like 10 minutes, you will see hawks fighting sparrows, hawks fighting crows, because hawks are like the biggest jerk in nature, and they're constantly trying to eat all the other birds' eggs, and you can see them fighting, and it's this beautiful thing that you can see any day, like any day you want. You can just go outside and you can see it. I remember the first time I told my wife this, she thought I was joking. She's like, no, you can't really see hawks fighting crows. You can see them all the time, and it's this great battle between like an interloper and defenders and the little versus the big. Of course, you feel bad for the hawks because they're hungry too. And it's not like crows don't also eat eggs. You know, there's no like good guys and bad guys, but it's this whole drama that plays out in our skies, which unless you live in a city, you have a front row ticket to see. So open up your eyes. So I really appreciate that. Some fiddle playing here. This song seems to be about camping with a lover, a woman who you then have broken up with, and so he like finds her pocket knife and thinks about that. You know, this album is not afraid to be what it is, right? And it's this kind of like camping theme. You know, there's a lot of privilege kind of like woven into this kind of song, but it seems to be this is really what this person's living through. This feels like a real moment, and just sort of like camping detritus is the theme of the album. Like the stuff that you leave behind, like the remnants. You know, like I used to, back when my son was in Cub Scouts, not in Boy Scouts, I could go with him camping, and I wore this vest. And like I've never thrown away the little wrappers of stuff that are in that pocket because it's a reminder of those happy times, right? So this song kind of taps into that. The lyrics, maybe August 29th, if I make it through July, thank God for coffee and apple pie. I don't like apple pie, but I'll take the thank God for coffee. Funny thing about this whole quarantine and being stuck in the basement, I'm stuck in the basement with my son, and there's like I think there's a horn in the back of the song, but I don't actually know because my son had a French horn lesson at the same time as I was listening to this. And for some reason, it went along with it perfectly. It's quite nice. The album ends on another downbeat note, which I think is appropriate, right? The whole album itself is a little bit slow, a little too much for the Guardians case, but you know, like a little bit too down low. There's a little bit more slightly jazzy, very hissy sounds, very pastoral themes of nature, heather and roses and willows and forests that kind of encapsulate this entire album. But you know, between like this and Taylor Swift, the outdoors are really being well featured in modern, successful, folksy, country-ish music. I'm not sure that's a parallel worth making. Okay, well, I'm going to turn the heat back on in this room because I'm freezing. I appreciate you hanging with me here in the basement. I know it's not fun when YouTubers change their backgrounds, so hopefully you can at least appreciate this really old Who poster that I found, my brother found in my dad's basement. It's really quite nice. Okay, well, until next time, I don't know what I'm going to review next. You can always put stuff in the comments. I'll check it out. And until next time, for Joe Nightwhistle, there's the camera.